So I wanted to just basically just jump in right quick. And today I wanted to go ahead and get started with the basically just concrete and some very simple assemblies on how I approach or my approach doing the takeoffs on the concrete and how I want the formatting and the information being broken up. So the very first thing, pretty much, that I do when I start doing a takeoff, I take my time to actually study the drawings, and the main thing the first thing would be to really understand the scope of work that you're about to take off. Once you know, let's say in this instance, we're doing masonry, right? The client asked he wanted basically all the concrete and he wanted all the CMU lintels and then reinforcement. So this is the sample that we're gonna go over right now that I completed is a masonry takeoff, a concrete takeoff, and so pretty much again, the way that I approach this is I get really familiar with the scope of work that the client is looking for. Then the next thing for me, it's understanding the drawings. I take the time to study the drawings. I look through the plans. If they're not, if the drawings are not labeled correctly, I like to go through all the pages and pretty much relabel them so that it's easier for me to navigate through the pages with different titles. So you guys can do that through the batch rename pages. You guys can pretty much renumber or rename the pages so that it's easier for you to navigate. So that's just one of the quick things that I do. I like to basically go through all the pages, study the pages. The second thing that I like to do is once I understand what my scope of work is, I like to go into the detail pages, for instance, and I like to start highlighting information that's related to the scope of work. This is just information that's going to help me determine the type of assembly or the different, for instance, in this one is a concrete takeoff, and so by highlighting, or by looking into the detailed information or specifications for concrete, I'm able to, it helps me better understand the strength of the concrete. It's calling for 3,000 psi. And different, basically just read through the details and make sure that we're picking up on any notes, anything that's related to the scope of work that you're about to take off. And one of the things that I like to do, like I said, is I like to go through and I like to start highlighting and basically just getting as familiar as I can with with the information that I need. So for instance here, I highlighted the specifications on coverings and concrete and some masonry information on here. And then also I like to keep all of my tabs open so that it's easier for me to navigate through the different drawings. And basically, once I can identify where my detail pages are, it's easier for me to keep the tabs open because I can just easily click back and forth and basically just go back and forth in between the drawings, right? So it's just easier for me to do it that way. The other thing that I like to, that's imperative that you guys take care of before we get started with any takeoff on any page, I need you guys to go through and set your scales. It's happened to me before where I set up a scale on a page, the scales are not matching up correctly, or something is not, or maybe the scale's not set, or it could be a lot of things. So one of the things that I like to do after I set my scale is double checking to make sure that the scale is correct. Okay, if I use a preset scale for this, I like to go back, and once I set my scale, I like to find measurements or set measurements on walls, or any set measurements that are already given on the drawings. And pretty much I like to just take just use my ruler here and do a quick takeoff, just to ensure that that the links are correct. So this will at least serve as a notification that or notification to me to know that the scales are correct. You don't have to be exact, but at least we know that we're at 10 feet here. And I like to leave the measurements on the page, basically to show the client that the scales are correct, that we went through that process to ensure that we're doing this correctly. Again, this is a concrete takeoff, so one of the things that I like to focus on is I like to go through each one of the line items, and I like to take it one step at a time. So, and then also have have a way that's easier for us to understand the data and understand how we go about doing a takeoff. I know that I spoke to you guys before about doing the takeoff, basically on elevations, or start basically per elevations, right? So one of the things that I like to do in order to keep to help me understand and help me keep track of what I'm doing, I like to basically just work my way around the property, work around, and basically complete a 360 when I'm doing my measurements to make sure that I'm catching everything as I'm moving along, right? So, being the front of the property here, I basically try to understand anything that's related to concrete that appears here in the front of the house, and that's how I start pretty much. So I started my takeoff here with the concrete driveway. It's a pretty much given, and so I'm looking through the drawings, and I'm basically highlighted and took a measurement of the concrete, and then basically worked my way down, and I saw that the 2-foot concrete curb was being called out on here as well. Took my measurement, and then basically I started working my way around, with the privacy wall, if you will. And as you guys can see, I'm taking, I did the takeoff pretty much, and trying to work my way around, correct? The next one, the way I like to do this takeoffs, I like to use the overall measurement, or I like to use the overall tool that's going to help me understand materials down the line, or basically if I have a square feet, the total square footage for an area. Basically, I just have to find out on the details how deep it is, and then I can figure out how many cubic yards of concrete I'm going to need based on the square foot area and how deep it is. By doing a square foot takeoff, I'll be able to come up with that correct information. Same thing if this had, let's say, wire mesh reinforcement. I can go back and I can review the exact specifications for the concrete and driveway. But for this particular case, this property didn't include any information, any details regarding the exact the exact assembly, or how this driveway was supposed to be composed and what type of reinforcement it had. It didn't include that information. So basically what I included for the client was just an overall square foot count, because there is no detail on the assembly. Basically that's the very first information, or the very first thing that I was able to provide for the client. And one of the things that I also like to do is I do the takeoff on Planswift. As you guys can see, to keep the formatting as easy to understand to the client, I like to basically assemble information page by page. Okay, so as you guys can see here, I did my takeoff for all this for all the items here on page A1, and as you guys can see on on the Excel sheet, pretty much the first line items that I'm calling out is the information on page A1. All right. Um, Again, the drawings were not giving me exact details in regards to the type of the breakdown of the assembly. So pretty much when that information is missing, go ahead if it's related to the scope of work, still provide the information, but provide the overall measurement to the client. And let's always include a note as to why we're not breaking down the information even further. In this particular case, like I said, we didn't have more details in regards to reinforcement. We didn't have more details in regards to any kind of underlayment, any kind of crushed rock or anything like that, or gravel that had to go underneath the driveway. So what I did here, I just provided the square foot area. Same thing with the walls, with the privacy walls for the project. I did my takeoff, but it didn't it didn't give me information on the exact or the type of wall that it was, except for the information that's given here in the drawings. There's nothing on the detail pages that directed me on how to properly take off the rest of the materials that are related to this particular wall, except for foam stucco privacy. And it didn't tell me what type of stucco or basically the breakdown. So on this one, what I did is I just provided the overall information. I provided the total linear feet for the 6 foot high wall, and then I took into account pretty much the square footage of the area of the walls, right? So if you guys can see, I basically I used my square foot tool, and I highlighted the perimeter or the exterior areas of the wall, the perimeter of the wall, to come up with the exact square feet. And then obviously this one is the top of the wall, so I got that highlighted. But for instance, here you guys will see that I did do a linear foot takeoff as well to help me just determine the overall linear feet of the wall. And by giving the client this information, they should be able to pretty much make a really good assumption on the pricing, based on linear footages and square footages. It's the overall information we can provide for the client. Basically, and then another thing that I did on this one is after I was completed, I completed the takeoff. Obviously, I always like to show the legend, and one of the things that the reason why we want to show the legend here is to so that the client can go back and really see basically the infographics. I've been getting a lot of feedback, or it's something the clients really like. It makes it easier for them to understand the information on how we did the breakdown, how we went about doing the takeoff, and it helps them understand and see if we miss any items. And then